new episode on resilience. This one is a special one. I'm starting one-to-one interviews, and I'm super excited for Lara to join me today. So, on resilience, as a reminder, is where leaders, entrepreneurs, builders, and creators get to inspire and be inspired. So, thank you, Lara, to join us today. I'm excited to be guided through what it took and which path you have been taking, leading you to being an amazing SVP, I think, for considering the feedback you received from your teams. And yeah, let us understand a little more what it entails.
Yeah, let's jump in. You've got some really interesting questions that I've been preparing. So let's go in and go through them, because it's been quite a journey, and it's so interesting when you do prepare for some of these questions. You don't think about these types of things very often, and I think it really brings up a sense of, wow, I have gone through a lot, and you do build that resilience.
And that's definitely like we can't start an episode on resilience without going to your own personal definition of resilience.
Yeah,
So, in like a couple of minutes, give us
yeah.
the intro. Who's Lara, and what is your own definition of resilience?
So, Lara Barnes, I've been in customer success for quite some time in SaaS. And, I think it comes from building resilience, really comes from going through a number of ups and downs. And strong, resilient leader is there to build and drive high performing teams. But what makes you resilient? And that resilience really comes from one, having a positive attitude, but two, embracing what really comes at you, because you're going to go through so many peaks and troughs, and you've got a lot of challenges coming at you. So it's like working in chaos and seeing the clarity. You have to be able to understand and have your North Star as to what you're driving towards. And within customer success, that is, what is your customer promise, and how are you going to lead those teams in order to deliver that? But I think another really important point is emotional understanding. You need to be able to understand yourself and others, and work out during those challenges that come at you how you're going to respond and drive people through those changes.
That's true because it is. I feel like it's hard to be resilient alone. You've got
Yeah.
to pull everyone around you up, and everyone around you has to pull each other up.
Yeah.
Um, but tell us more, like, what's been particularly like your resilience story? Do you feel like there's been like a kind of like fil rouge, like we say in French, this continuous thing that has been like pushing you forward?
I mean, the past 7 years in building what I did at Sitecore was a huge achievement for me. Building something from scratch and building a team with majority of them staying with you that period of time. So they're going through the build, they're going through the evolution, and they're also seeing how you lead and where you take them. And a lot of it, I think, comes down to a number of things, which is you've got to be confident in yourself and be assertive in what you want to speak up on, because you're there as a customer success leader to represent the customer end to end. And um, customer success is in a very privileged position from seeing everything end to end, from how it initially you go to market and the product is actually put to market, all the way through to how you serve that customer, drive them through adoption and consumption, and take them through that renewal and potentially upsell, cross-sell motion. So you see everything end to end. So you have to speak up, because you're not there to just represent one part of the organization. You're not a department. You're driving a whole motion, and you can influence and work with and collaborate across the whole journey. So customer success is a whole company initiative, not just a department. And I really believe that, and running through a customer lifecycle project, it really built out that understanding across the rest of the business. And it was more of a cultural motion that started to happen, which was really exciting, and I loved it. I think another resilience piece is you really do have to practice learning from failure, because failure is a horrible word, but there are things that just don't go right. So you just have to move with understanding where things haven't gone right, where maybe it's just hitting a target. You haven't hit the target, and you need to, as personally, maybe EMEA didn't hit the target and the other two regions did, and you need to work out why and what you need to do in order to do that. And once you've worked that out, you can, drive forward on a number of different objectives. So learning and putting in place small changes rather than, completely moving from one thing to the next the whole time. You need to have that grounding so that the team know where they're going, what they need to do, and you can pivot and move. I think the other piece to it is I'm very, very success driven. So it's about achieving a goal, and personal growth is really huge for me. So happiness, the whole kind of sense of having a positive impact, and happiness is a really key part to how I need to operate within. So I set the goals, but I also drive myself nuts because I am so goal driven that I push myself too much. And we can go into that as to how I became more resilient and what I did around that. But I think why, the success piece for me is, why are you here? And how do you help others become more resilient? And that contribution to leadership is really one of the key things that really motivates and drives me.
Yeah, it's true. We talk a lot about success in general, but it has a very specific definition for each person. And beyond the individual success, we were having a conversation at the dinner table, a random one. We were talking about what pulls people forward, and there's been like some studies that people were also like happier, and the mental health was slightly less affected when we had like some big things happening back then, where you just had to put food on the table, or when there was a time of war. We had a common goal, a purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming like it's important to have a goal, at least to have this direction. Being a goal.
Yeah, I think so many teams are running towards a target, and they just lose themselves because it's so focused. The business is so focused on a target, they lose themselves in what their real purpose is and why they're really in that company. And unless you've got a leader that is constantly giving you the grounded motion of why we're here, what we need to do, and how we're going to go do it to meet that target, you can't just do the how the whole time in terms of just running towards the target. Otherwise, you just lose a sense of purpose for yourself, and you become so overwhelmed in customer success with the amount of things that you are managing that it isn't a beneficial place to be, because you start to get to that certain burnout.
Oh, and obviously this is like my sweet spot. My favorite topic. So what would you say has been like, would be quite critical, to keep an eye on when leading a successful team, so you're not hitting that wall, or so the team is not hitting that wall in that aspect? How can you keep driving a group of people whilst making sure that there is this balance? And I'm assuming as well that it depends on what we believe burnout sources are from. Like for a long time, it was having these conversations where we think that burnout is doing too much of the hard stuff, too much of like pushing the difficult things, but actually realizing the importance of what you said here, like it's losing parts of ourselves, is when you don't do enough of what you love
Yeah.
whilst you're doing this hard stuff. So how in a business, especially like a function as important as success, not biased here because I was 10 years into CS, how do we do that?
I really believe it comes down to how the leadership are helping and focusing the team. So you can be in a really crazy environment, because we were mad environment. Product was difficult to manage, and we were there to do the catch-all. We were also there to retain and grow customers, but we were there to help with a lot of the escalations. And there, sometimes it was mad. And the team that I had with me knew our purpose, knew what I stood for, and I think that really helps. If you are 150% behind those individuals and you empower them to take decisions, and whatever decision they make, you back them, because they need to know that you are behind them, that you can move things forward, and they feel empowered. They're not young, innocent individuals. These are people that have been with you for a number of years, know how you work, know what the business needs, and really understand customers. These people are empathetic individuals who want to help that customer, and they're not going to make the wrong decision. So it's about ensuring that everyone has each other's back, and you know the underlying reason why you're there. And I once you've got that type of culture within the team and everyone's there to support each other, you know that you have that support, so you can take that customer down a certain road to help them. And then although it is busy, although it is stressful, and some days, you have those peaks and troughs, it's about knowing that everybody's there for one reason only, and that is to support each other and have a good time at work, as well as deal with the situations and problems that come up that they're being faced with. And I think if they have a resilient leader who they see as a real authentic person, who gets on the phone and just says, look, I'm really sorry, and I've done this to teams globally. I've sat on the phone and said, I'm having a really hard time. I'm really sorry. This is the stuff we're dealing with, and I'm trying to get done for you. It's just not going through, but I will continue to push for you. It's about telling people the truth and being very honest, and saying, this is how I'm going about it. Just give me a bit more time, because people just want to know that you're behind them. It's not that the business is going to make a decision. We're the business, and I think if you don't make that decision as a team, that you're there to make decisions and move the business forward within your own remit. There are other decisions outside of the other teams that need to be involved to move things forward. But I think as a team, you can actually take a lot of accountability and responsibility to drive things forward if you have a pinnacle leader that is wanting to take that accountability and lead a team through either difficult times or periods of ups and downs. So I think if you're resilient, they also learn that sense of resilience and empowerment too.
Yeah, it's very much, leadership is important in like how you perpetuate the quality of the workplace, isn't it, and the culture, especially. And I think this honesty that you bring to the table is really getting people in this togetherness. We're in this together. I'm not this image and mask that not anything is happening to me. We all are going through the same, and it gives them the psychological safety as well to be able to open up when the time comes and when they need, and helping as well with delegation, with being able to set boundaries when they can't do a task, as opposed to lying and being like, I'll take this.
Yeah.
So it's really important. But you mentioned, you know, like there's the group resilience, but what has helped you when you were in that position? beyond the disclosure and being able to be transparent with the team? Because I think when you get there, you had already done some work.
Yeah,
And
you
you're
have, because you're confident. Yeah.
what would be a tip that you'd give to another leader who's facing a setback or a difficult thing for the first time? What was your experience like?
Yeah. So I was near burnout and I wasn't acknowledging it. And I was even being sent articles from my boss at the time on LinkedIn, articles on burnout. And I was like, why is he sending me this? Because obviously I was passionate about my job, but I think he could really see, my God, we're really pushing her to the limit. So he was very good, because he gave me an incredible coach called Matt Guyver. And I'm going to be doing an interview with Matt and talking a bit more about it. But there was a recognition when I got on the phone with Matt. Matt gave me this overall, right, what are your goals that you are personal, professional? And we went down this list, and then across the top was 1 to 100, like a bar. And he said, so where are you on all those goals? And I was like, 100, 100, 100. He was like, Lara, there's no way you can be 100 at all of these. And he said, there needs to be 100 as a limit. And then you're like moving these bars over, and they just move week by week or month by month. I was like, no, everything's like extreme. And he said, you can't cope with that. That's just not, it's not. And it took him just that sentence to say, that's not something you need to cope with. And I was like, oh, really? Because you start pushing yourself to a limit. And because I'm so goal driven, that you want to achieve something so badly. And for me, it was obviously, it was all the KPIs for my team, but it was building an incredible foundation in customer success at the business I was working at, and having the impact across the whole company. And I was doing it, but I was killing myself at the same time. And at that point, we'd also launched the renewal team, and we were all having such a hard time with the operational integration of the renewal processes. And it was really, really tough. And then I was, on calls in front of my CEO and the ELT all the time. And it was just, so the pressure was so much. And in the end, and I think one is the recognition. You have to recognize you're at burnout or near burnout, or it's enough. And you'll know this because I used to wake up in the morning, and I never do this because I just love my job, is I'd wake up and go, I can't do this anymore. And that's when you go, what do I do? Do I leave the company? Is it the company? No, it's how I'm actually processing that information. Because then I used to sit there and go, well, people like Mark Zuckerberg and, Sheryl Sandberg and, all of these huge names come to mind. And you think, how have they run huge businesses? Mine's just like hundreds of millions. They've run billions. How are they doing it? How are they coping? There must be a secret. And then I got on this call with Matt, and I was like, what's their secret? And he's like, there is no secret. That was like an oh my God moment, where I thought, okay, it's how I'm processing this information and how I put in place my resilience to managing what I want to achieve. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you get through that. So I think you acknowledge, first of all, it's the acknowledgement, right? You need to know you're at that point, and then you need to reassess how you're thinking about your goals, I think. And then you need to tell people, you need to step back a bit, and you need to have a break. You need to take a couple of days out, and you need to go and sit in the forest, with a book. You need to do some breathing, you need to do some yoga, and you need to go, right, I'm stepping back, like my foot is off the gas just for a few days, and I just need to get my head set. And then you kind of you work out, you recalibrate how and what's important. But Matt helped me do this. I was very, very lucky that my boss put me in touch with, Matt, and I had him for a good year. And he helped me, but it was somebody telling you, I think, no, you don't need to operate this way. And there is no huge secret as to how these people do it. Like, it's not as if it's an underground thing. It's just how you're processing that information in your own head.
Yeah, that's super important. And like coaching tends to become, I think like today is a more, there's more awareness around coaching, lucky
Yeah.
for me and Matt and other coaches.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is still this block of awareness because the work starts, and I always
It is
tell
like,
that to my clients, when you start realizing that there is something you want to work on or that needs some attention, you already done 70% of the work.
yeah. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are so many people, like when you don't see it and you're so tunnel vision on your in your own pain or in your own like drive, and one of the most important thing with the discipline like coaching or the growth mindset or anything around the mind and how we perceive things around us is really to start appreciating that journey that gets you to those goals, that changes your relationship with the big bad word that is failure.
Yeah, because you do start to look at yourself as I'm not achieving it, and then you go down this other hole, which is not helpful, because then you start being so self-reflective that you're not achieving it. In fact, you are achieving it, and to get to that point of recognition and know when you're getting to that point of burnout. And the next time it happened the year after again, and I was like, hang on a second, I know this feeling. And you kind of go, oh God, we're not going down that road anymore. And within days, you've switched it round. Whereas before it took weeks, maybe a few months, right, to recognize that. I was only being told as well. And being told, yeah, you're at burnout. I was like, no, I'm not. But then you start to recognize those symptoms and you can pull back on it, and you realize it again. So I've only ever gone down that road again and then recognized it. So I feel like I'm getting better at it now.
Yeah, I think it's this impression, and you mentioned it as well. From the outside, when you're looking up at trying to model people for success, you only see the outside, you only see
Yeah.
the metrics, what has been achieved. You don't see the internal turmoil. In
No.
this platform, we have so many entrepreneurs and leaders and creators and builders that come here and start talking to each other, and they realize we're all in the same shit. We are all going at some point gonna have to crawl in the mud. Like our lovely Simon Sinek always mentioned that. And it's about how you sit in the mud with the people around you and how you step out of it. And over the entire journey, being able to support each other and understand that.
Yeah.
And I think there's been like quite a few things that changed in your life. One thing as well that has been a quite crucial with the reads that you've had. And I know you're a book lover.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What
Oh,
would you recommend
yeah.
our audience, like some
Yeah.
three books that you'd say have been very pivotal for you?
Yeah. Huge. Gifford Thomas. If anyone hasn't read The Inspirational Leader, I read it in a weekend. It was so brilliant. And I'm in touch with Gifford Thomas, and I just love his books. I think how he puts it, how he writes it down, and how he conveys the elements and the qualities of an inspirational leader. Definitely read it. The other one was Brené Brown's Daring Greatly. I did a post on that, but I absolutely love her video of the man in the arena. It makes me quite emotional when I think about it, because I am that person in that arena covered in blood, sweat, and dust. And I am doing everything. And, I think the whole don't sit on the sidelines and criticize what I'm doing if you're not in the arena with me. I absolutely love that. And then the other one is one I read on holiday within a week. and I loved it. It's by Nikki Owens, and it's called The Charismatic to the Core. And I wrote to her too, and I think she's incredible. She's actually based in Kent, but she wrote quite a spiritual side to being charismatic and what it takes in leadership. So I really enjoyed her book too, and I took a lot out of all three of those.
That's very beautiful. You mentioned something very important as well that could be very useful for the audience and your teams is this initiative. You're reading something that really resonates with you and you go out and take the initiative to contact that person.
Yeah.
And you build that contact. And actually, as a writer, when you write, you want to connect with people. And I think it's super important. Like in the audience, guys, if you want to connect with Lara, go and reach out to her, ask her questions. I'm sure she'll be happy to answer. You can drop comments. And I think it's being able to say to yourself, okay, I'm in a situation. Let me reach out. Let me ask for help as well when I need, because a lot of things have been around how you've been supported and how you're supporting your team. And I think it does take a village.
It does. And, also I think it's not just about when you're having problems, it's about when you see incredible things and people have done amazing work, you need to reach out to them. Just tiny things. And, I thought this morning when I had breakfast at this hotel, I'm not sure whether I should go up and thank the guy that cooked my eggs, but I watched him make that dish with love this morning, and I was like, I think I need to go and say something to him because he's taken pride in making this dish. And I went up and his smile across his face when I told him, I watched you make my eggs with love and I really enjoyed them this morning. Thank you. And his face just lit up. And he's, said, thank you so much for that compliment. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of courage to also go and say thank you or well done to somebody, because people are really trying their best the whole time, and you can help guide them do it a little bit more if you're giving them some great feedback too.
Oh, that is so powerful.
Yeah.
And for speaking with a few people in the hospitality industry, burnout is a big thing.
Yeah.
And mostly because it's the most ungrateful job.
Yeah.
You're on your feet the majority of your life. You're ruining your back, and then you're getting customers shouting at you.
Yeah, that their eggs weren't right, or the hollandaise sauce didn't taste good, or whatever.
Yeah, and it's so nice. And when you leave reviews in general, and I think this is an important component of um, management and the growth mindset, is like how feedback is delivered. Quite often people think, oh, this was a beautiful experience, and they forget about it. They won't leave a review. But when something happens negatively,
Yeah.
that's the first thing that I think I'm going to go and leave that review. And I think when you manage a team, it's the same. You want to give the praise alongside the constructive feedback, and both as well, having like, you're doing this so well, and that has room for improvement, but having a balance in between the two
But
is.
building that trust so everybody can have those groups of those reach out groups where they can ask for that help and they can talk over certain problems and not feel stupid. Like, all of us don't know the answers. I don't know the answers to most things, but I have people around me that either know the answers or we sit there and we'll work out the answer together. Each of us know a little bit, or certain proportions of the answers, but together you can actually build something pretty incredible as a solution. I've seen that so much. And it's also, as a leader, you don't have all the answers, but you're there to, set a direction, and you know how to do that. There's just the other pieces to it on how and what happens during that whole process. You need to do it together. And that's what I really enjoyed doing in my last job, is the empowerment of bringing everyone with me on that journey and ensuring that they were part of it, because they can go into their next interview and they can talk about being part of that journey and what they contributed and had an impact on. And that's, you know, that's for me a great place to be as a leader, because I know that they've been part of something that they can go and talk about and proudly talk about how they had an impact on either customers or process or the overall business. And, you know, you only have these people for a certain period of time and you need to help them in their journey. So if I have helped them be a bit more resilient, then I think I've done my job.
We love that. We love that. And you talk about resilience and how you'd spread it. But most importantly, what has been your biggest challenge to date and how you overcame it?
I think I wrote a few things down, but I think the biggest challenge was, knowing my limits, right? That was a real challenge. Building what I built before over the past 7 years was a challenge. There was a lot of up and down. But having, good leaders around me and also building great leadership in the team also helped me. We all came with different experience. I think the thing I've learned over the past few months is know my worth. You don't really understand what you know until you go out there and start putting yourself out there and talking about a subject like customer success, and I have been doing that. And that was really difficult for me to do, just to put a few videos out on LinkedIn is quite a thing. But it's I've started to realize and understand what I know. And I think individually everybody doesn't really realize what they know, and really it's the application of that and how you lead and manage people which helps deliver and drive your the goals that you have either within the business or your overall goals, individually and personally. But I do think I've really realized what I can contribute to an organization, just by doing a lot of reflection and understanding what I have learned about myself over the past few months, when kind of going within and digging deep and reading a lot more books.
Of course, always about this. But these are important. When it comes to growth and personal growth, these are important. It's what we listen to, what we read, everything we absorb, the environment we're in, the people we surround ourselves with. And we don't realize how important these are. So the people we talk to who are in a toxic environment only realize how bad it was when they hit the wall and they come out of it and they see what's out there. And that it doesn't need to be so crappy.
And I think another thing I've really learned, I was working with Cheryl Klein over the past, who's another leadership coach in the US, over the past 6 months. And she really taught me to write down specific goals. And I'm goal orientated, right? But what do I want to achieve? And it's mapping out your future on a page and then going back and really manifesting that, because you really start to, once you've written it down, it really starts to come towards you because you've got absolute clarity in what you want. That's another thing I've learned over the past few months. And that has been pretty powerful in, I think, just feeling your roots and what you stand for, because then you've got absolute clarity in why you want to do it. And now you have a plan as to how you're going to go about doing it. Then you feel better. And those people that are sitting in those environments where they're just not happy, that's one exercise that you can do. It's kind of taking that step back, going to sit in nature, write down what you want, and really start to think about why you want it and how it's going to happen. And that can really be a powerful exercise for you until you work out whether that environment is the one you want to stay in or move on. So, you know, there's things you can do. It's not just living in it now. There are things you can do for yourself in order to move through and get to that solution.
And it's really how you empower yourself through the process. Sometimes we have to go through the hard stuff to be
Yeah.
able to have that breakthrough. And it's very unfortunate, but we can do it. And what would be one thing you would leave our audience with when it comes to, especially for aspiring leaders? Because being a leader is not just being a manager, it's really taking it to the next level, you know.
Yeah.
Um, how would
Setback.
you,
Go
yeah.
on. What's the
How would you tell them or encourage them, someone who is struggling with that and is just facing, I know so many leaders who do not have that courage yet to open up and tell their team they're struggling, and who see themselves in that position where everything is overwhelming. They have so much pressure from higher management or investors, and they are trying to keep the boat afloat and doing so many things. Like, what is one thing you would recommend to them? Some few last words to inspire them to step up.
I think you got to do some work on yourself. To be honest with you, I think it's really understanding you in how and what you want in that environment. Because if you're just thinking about things as a huge problem and you just can't see, you know, the wood through the trees, then if you had some clarity in what you really prioritized and you boxed it, you're going to have a better understanding of how you actually manage in that environment. But I think, you know, with setbacks and things that come at you, there's loads of chaos and fire drills all the time. And you just need to kind of push those to one side. They come, but then push them to one side and don't let them, you know, really fall on your shoulders. I think it's absolute clarity on what the goal is, and everything else is just noise. I mean, I worked in chaos for 7 years, so I became very good. Even my boss said to me, "I think you like working in chaos." And I was like, "I don't. I'm very structured." But I can see the noise, but it doesn't actually hit me. And you know, those setbacks are just stepping stones to get you to that next thing. Think about them in that way.
Yeah, being able to see, it's about reframing how we look at things.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very beautiful thing that I think what we look at, what high performers bring to the table, being always talking about the technicality of things, and not often we do hear so much about the human side of things, the self work, the personal development, and how important it is, because it takes a village not only in a business but as well to develop ourselves. It takes our coaches, therapists, friends, family, the support system. Then comes the employees, the team, the co-founder, everyone in that microcosm. And we don't talk so much about ourselves, about like these pains and what we had to face to keep going. So thank you so much for sharing this side of yourself and this side of leadership with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate the time. Thank you. And you know, I love the title around resilience. I hadn't really thought about it a great deal until you asked me. And I remember that first conversation where you said, "How do you cope? How do you cope as a woman leader doing that?" And I said, "My God, I'm like a swan. Everything looks amazing on the outside, and I'm just pedaling so fast." It's all about how I look. It's just, you know, I look calm, but on the inside, I'm really not.
It
But
is.
you can turn things around by having those specific internal goals as to why and what you're doing things, why you're doing those things in a certain way. And I feel a lot more comfortable now. as you go through those certain situations, that I can be more resilient and I can cope with what comes at me next.
Absolutely. And on this note, when I started talking about resilience on the podcast, and I started like always ended up with a lot of women in the same room talking about the challenge. But one thing that came over time is that as we were trying to have these conversations about women and resilience, and obviously the women body works in a certain way where we have certain higher threshold of about pain. I'm going to say it, put it out there. I'm sorry, but this this is what it is. When I went to get my first tattoo, and the artist was a man, and he was like trying to explain to me about the level of pains. I was like, after you've done waxing. So, but then I started talking with more people and having other challenges that were brought up, and actually understanding that resilience wasn't about gender.
No.
Um, Actually, it was just about you and yourself, and when one human to another, and how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive others and things, and how you take that report that isn't working can ruin your day, but it's not the report that is ruining your day, it's how you see that issue
Yep.
and how you can change that narrative.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for being a wonderful women leader and inspirational guest on the podcast. Everyone, thank you for listening to us and being a wonderful audience. Please do follow Lara Barnes and ask us any questions if you'd like in the comments. We'll get back to you either in the comments on the event or via DM if you don't want to put them out there. But please do dare ask your questions.